Hello, Superboy Beyond fans. Welcome back. We are going back into Superboy today for one of our commentaries. We're going to Season 3, Episode 10, Mindscape. This is one I thought we had done a while ago, but I guess we didn't.
Yeah, I think this is just one of those things where we discussed this episode so many times that I guess we just figured that we must have done it at some point, but we haven't. So yeah, one of the best episodes of the show, which is probably why we talk about it so often. It's just this is easily one of my favorite stories. I forget exactly where this fell on our ranking list, but it must have been in our top 10, I imagine.
Was it?
I don't know. Let me pull that up actually, just in case. Okay, my personal ranking, it came in second place. In our shared ranking, it was number 4.
Okay,
so yeah, Mindscape is top 5. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's get going with this one.
Yep.
Do you want to explain how this all goes?
Yep. So we're not going to have any clips of the episode in our streaming episode here today. You'll hear no audio from it. It's just there will be a very heavily filtered version right up there, just so you can keep in track. So in case you got to run to the bathroom, you can pause it and then keep in track with us. So we're going to get started in a 3, 2, 1 brainwave, since this is a mind episode. So I'm going to count you in. So 3, 2, 1, brainwave.
So yeah, famously, this is an episode that was very heavily inspired by what's it, For the Man Who Has Everything by Alan Moore.
Yes.
And yeah, it's just one of those great episodes because of that. And you know, I've probably mentioned this way back when we first started this podcast, but back in the day, I saw this episode before I read For the Man Who Has Everything. So as a kid, later on, you know, I think I finally read it, and then I saw the animated version, and I thought that they were ripping off Superboy for a bit. I mean, granted, I was very young at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, just for a second, I thought that Mike Carlin was being ripped off by Alan Moore, but no, it was a definite
the other way
homage.
around.
Yeah,
sort of.
And it's not ripping it off. You know, they've been very open about the fact that this is incredibly heavily inspired by that story. They just didn't have the rights to go a little bit closer to the original.
Yep. My headcanon on this is that the organism that attaches to him is a withering version of the Black Mercy. That's
almost like it's rotted down to a slime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
I can see that.
Yeah, and it's trying to hold on to whatever existence it has.
I like that. I mean, my headcanon was always that it's, you know, related to the Black Mercy, but maybe it's just a different strain of the plant or whatever. Like almost like maybe this is the Green Mercy. Like maybe there's a White Mercy as well and a Red Mercy or whatever. Who knows? Maybe they all do different things.
There is a Red Mercy in the comics, but it induces fear and anger, and that showed up
to this one.
Yeah, and that showed up in Superboy pre-New 52.
That's interesting. You know, I always thought that concepts like this could be expanded on a little bit further. You know, I always thought that the Kryptonian like fungus that infects Superman in the Jungle Line and drives him absolutely mad for a while. I always thought it would be fun if there were other encounters with Kryptonian plant life and stuff that maybe each one has a different effect on Superman. That could have been. I don't think it ever really, unless I'm, you know, if maybe some people watching this can remember some examples, but I don't remember that ever really coming up again. Maybe it's just something that only Alan Moore would think of.
Yeah.
I've got to say, I do like the big rock prop.
It's good. It in some moments it doesn't look real, and in others it
Yeah, but I
does
mean,
look
the
real.
shape of it is so. I don't know. It doesn't look like a regular rock. The way that it's shaped, it does look slightly alien. Which, yeah, okay, it doesn't look quite real, but I mean, maybe we can headcanon that as rocks just look like that on that planet, wherever it's from.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know what it is about this episode that first grabbed my attention as a kid. I know that I was very heavily into slime. I think every kid that watched Nickelodeon back in the day loved slime. So seeing this episode where Superboy is, being basically being tortured by a slime monster, I don't know, it captured my imagination as a kid.
yeah.
I think Flubber is the movie that started it for me, though, to be honest. I always wanted Flubber.
Mm. And now he wakes up, and and at first he thinks, "Oh, it was all a dream. I was just nodding at work," which would be very out of character for Clark.
One thing I always appreciated with this episode, often when you have scenes happen a second time, whether it's by time travel or maybe it's just, you have a scene of someone leaving a message on someone's voicemail, and then later you hear the voicemail played. And for some reason, these high budget Hollywood movies can't use the same audio twice, and it's
Yeah,
very clearly a different take. It always annoys the piss out of me. But this episode, the Jackson audio clip is identical. I don't know if it is the exact same take or if the actors were just that good, but this is one of the few examples where the audio is correct. And I don't know, as a kid, I always appreciated that.
yeah.
I love this scene.
I don't know if Lana nodding there down to his chest it was the right move. Maybe Stacy should have just pointed.
I don't know. I like it that they kept it subtle. Although it did look a little bit like she was just gulping,
Yeah.
like a nervous, like an old style cartoon voice. I always appreciated with this scene how it starts off fairly realistic to Lana's reaction, but the moment she calls Clark a geek, even if it's true, that's the moment then this isn't Lana. There's something else going on now, you know?
Yeah.
Because Lana wouldn't be that cruel about Clark, not at this stage. Let's face it, they grew up together.
I think her reaction in the later sequence when she supposedly found Clark is a little bit more realistic.
A little bit, yeah. Like her arguments in that scene actually make sense. I've got to say, my favourite reaction in this scene, though, is Jackson. I mean, I know we've just skipped past it, but anybody watching this, go back when this is over and just look at Jackson's face during the close-ups. Even there, look at his face. He just looks manic. I've
Yeah.
always thought, it's great. He's just got wide eyes and he's just like that. It's just, yeah, he's great.
And then it just subtly changes when Dr. Stern comes in.
One of the most underrated characters on the show, Dr. Stern. What I wouldn't have given to have an episode where like she's working with Peterson. That would have been great. Let's face it, how many episodes of Superboy did they have where there's like a science experiment that's gone wrong? Could we not have had another one of those? Maybe in season 4 instead of a clip show, since there are so many. You could have made it a bottle episode to save money and just did a clip show that's, I don't know, some experiment has gone wrong in the Bureau and Superboy is on the other side of the world, so they have to solve it themselves. That could have been fun. Shoot it entirely with second unit. And as a kid, and even to this day, I still want a laser pen that can actually burn through something. I know they actually exist, but I don't even have anything I'd use it for, I just want a laser that actually cuts stuff.
Yeah. And each one of these sequences kind of leads into the next with what's going on.
Definitely. And that robot chest thing that they've got going on, okay, it's not quite, big budget Hollywood film standard, but for television, it's pretty damn good.
Especially for television in the early 90s.
Yeah. For what is this, 1990, 1991 at the latest, Yeah, it's really good. I wouldn't say it's quite on up to the level that Data's robot parts were in Star Trek: The Next Generation, but it's pretty close.
Yeah.
I always thought Data's. I mean, it mostly is helped by the fact that Data's would be covered in LEDs, flashing and stuff. Anyway, yeah, Lex Luger really stretching out that costume.
But he's doing a great job here.
Absolutely.
I forget what the story is behind this. I know, he chose the name Lex Luger because he was a fan of the Superman character, and specifically Lex Luthor as his wrestler's name.
Yeah, I did tweet at him years ago asking how it came about, and he said apparently the producers of the show just called up his agent one day and said, "Would you like to do an episode?" And he said, "Yeah." That was literally as complicated as it got. I guess they figured, if he's got the name Lex Luger, he'll probably jump at the chance, and they were right.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that the reason Rowdy Roddy Piper got in the show is because famously, didn't he do something where he wore a Superman t-shirt? There was like some famous moment where he did. I vaguely remember Steve Shives talking about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm guessing that's why Rowdy Roddy Piper got into it too. It's a shame he didn't do a second appearance anywhere. Either of those actors,
Yeah. The funny thing about this sequence where it's revealed that he's a robot, I've always found that to be the weakest of the moments.
I think maybe just purely because the fight scene, while it's fun, it's basically just throw Gerard, cut to a different angle, he lands, throw him again, he lands, throw him a third time, and it's over. That's basically all it was. There's not that much for having a professional wrestler on set. There's not much creativity in the fight scene.
Yeah, but the weak part is the fact that he looks down at himself, sees him as himself as a robot, and says, "This can't be right. I grew."
Yeah,
his mind should be working out how this is phony.
I mean, as a kid, it always annoyed me as well how adamant he was that I am human, because he's not. He literally says, "I am human." Well, you're not. You're not, because you're an alien, because you came in a rocket from somewhere else. Like, they know that kryptonite comes presumably from the same planet as him, although nobody's quite put the pieces together yet.
Yeah, the only pieces they put together is the fact that for some reason the kryptonite affects him. They don't realize
it would make sense that. I mean, has Superboy, did he even tell Peterson about the rocket? Did he let him know that he's probably an alien? Or is it just like, what's going on with me? We'll find out what we do. I don't remember quite how that even came about. It's one of those weird things. Like, he knows he's an alien because where would he come from otherwise?
Yeah, I think the Kents told him that they found him in the rocket, but that's about it.
But I mean, I can't see, where else would the rocket have come from in that era? I mean, probably Soviet Russia. But I
Yeah.
mean, if that was the case, wouldn't they be making more?
Hmm.
Especially once Superboy comes out as a crime fighter, you think the Russians would be like, oh, our old, the military asset that we lost all those years ago is going berserk. We better build another one.
Yeah.
Maybe that could have been a fun story. I don't know.
The way this sequence starts off with Lana just kind of staring at him, and then the look that she has on her face, it's not believable.
I mean, to be honest, while I think a lot of this dialogue makes sense character-wise, it's played just, I don't know, it's a little bit too far at times. I think maybe even the music takes it too far. I mean, I know we know it's a nightmare, so there's no reason to pretend otherwise, but yeah, I don't know, it's not my favorite part of this episode, I'll be honest.
Mm. But her arguments here as to why she's moving on from him makes sense.
Yeah. Plus, I always thought, it is just an excuse, really, because he could create a second secret identity in order just to take her out and say, maybe he could get that false beard that he wore in Black Flamingo. He could just wear a false beard when he takes her out on dates. Like just go out incognito. You don't have to go out on a date in costume, do you?
Or here's an idea. Throwing it out there. Tell her the truth.
I mean, honestly, by this point, I don't see why she can't be trusted with the truth.
I mean, if it was Andy, yeah, I could, at least season 2 Andy. Yeah,
I would never
could still
tell
not
Andy.
trusting him.
Yeah. TJ, I think, could be trusted with it, but I get why he wouldn't tell TJ, just purely because TJ's father is a newspaper man. It's probably the last person you should tell, especially in the first year of college. But yeah, Andy, I would never tell. But Lana, by this point, she can absolutely be trusted. Plus, he says he can't take her out on dates because it would endanger her life. Her life is already in danger. Let's face it, Lex Luthor, every time Lex Luthor has a plan, step one is always kidnap Lana.
Yeah.
Even Darla says it, I just, in Road's Not Taken, she was like, well, I didn't know what to do, so I just did what Lex always does, kidnap Lana.
Yeah.
It makes sense. She's already in danger. Everybody knows her and Superboy are close in that way. I always liked Stacey's performance in that scene. Like, I like how she was sort of in denial about it at first, and almost she gives Matt a smile, like almost like she wants him to tell her it was a joke of some kind or something.
Yeah.
It's quite believable. I always thought this flight sequence, even though he sort of half disappeared, is some of the best flying on the show, in my opinion. Just purely because you don't get to see him sort of float around slowly very often. It almost reminds me of the slightly dance-like flying in Supergirl, the movie. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I would love to see this sequence, but without him looking like a ghost. I think this sequence would look great, even just regular flying type.
And it's funny how as he's flying up and out, as a ghost, all of what was just happening, every one of those, we'll call them fantasies, is replaying in his head, and it's overlaying everything.
Yeah. I always thought of them as nightmares. Yeah, I just like how I know the compositing isn't great, but I just always liked how sort of slightly psychedelic this sequence is when he was flying through the thing and it all started warping and like they had that thing where it was like reflected and all of that. I don't know. I think it's if you're going to take inspiration from an Alan Moore story, you've got to have some Alan Moore visuals, and this is definitely his sort of style. I think
Yeah.
just because he was always pushing the envelope and visually in that sort of thing with the artists he would choose.
And now we get a sequence with the real Jor-El and Lara, although we never see their faces.
I always thought it was a shame that they didn't get, George Lazenby and Britt Eklund just to do voices or something. Even if they couldn't get them back to actually play the parts, call them up for a voiceover,
Hmm.
Although I suppose they didn't really need to be there. You can believe this is them well enough. The voices aren't exactly the same, but close enough.
But and the SFX they're using on the voices to make them echoey just means that it could be George Lazenby and Britt Eklund.
Yeah, it's just distorted,
Yeah, because they're dead.
Yeah. I wonder whatever happened to that sort of slime monster costume. I imagine by now it's probably just ruined and destroyed, but because I'm guessing it was just made out of like latex or something, or I don't know. Did visual effects, did they use silicone at this point? I know nowadays they do a lot.
Yeah. I don't know what they used at that point.
Yeah. Either way, it's a shame that costume is probably long since destroyed at this point.
Maybe not. Maybe it's sitting in the warehouse of the Superman Museum.
Maybe.
They just have no reason. They have no idea why it's there or what it is.
Yeah. It is almost a shame that they didn't do a Swamp Thing episode because that creature design, it does remind me slightly like if you just hung some like leaves and some little branches and stuff on him, that's a perfectly serviceable Swamp Thing costume. You'd have to add that sort of shape thing on his front of his mouth,
and don't forget you got to get Dick DeRock to play him.
Get whoever. I'm not that. Maybe get the guy. Yeah, if that's the guy that played him in the 2 movies that they made.
2 movies and the TV series.
Oh, and the TV. I didn't realize he played it in that as well.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So there we have it. That was Mindscape, which is just a phenomenal episode, in my opinion. Okay, it's not perfect, but let's face it, what episode is? There's things in Roads Not Taken that I would change. Every episode has something you can nitpick. So yeah, absolutely phenomenal episode. On the season 3 scale, I'd probably give this an 8 to an 8.5.
I would give it an 8.5. I mean, yeah, it has a few little drawbacks on it, and I mentioned what they are. Stacy's acting in the beginning of that one sequence is a little wonky.
Yeah, I mean, I can see the argument for it though, because it's a dream. Maybe they wanted a slightly dreamlike quality to her performance in it. Maybe they didn't want it feeling completely real.
Right.
Like dreams are weird. Like maybe that's what they were going for. I don't know, but you are right. It doesn't quite work. So yeah, who knows? Maybe it would have just been. I would have quite liked it if they'd swapped, changed up the lighting between each flashback, between each nightmare sequence. That could
Yeah.
have been fun. Like maybe they would have gotten progressively darker. Like you start it off, it just looks like the normal bureau set, but maybe each nightmare can have the lights turned down slightly. So by the end, they're almost in complete darkness,
Yes.
almost like it's reflecting Superboy's life signs. As he's dying, the lights are going out. That
Yep.
could have been a way to take it, and it would have maybe helped that moment a little bit. But as I say, this is just me nitpicking. Maybe what I would have done if I was directing the episode, but
Yeah.
hindsight's 2020, and plus it's television. They had to get this stuff done so quickly. They
Yeah.
might not have had time to turn down the
Yeah.
lights between
And
setups.
this is a bottle episode, so it does take place, one place,
Yeah.
one set. They didn't need to use much. Granted, they had to have that pillared sequence at the end when he's in, well,
Yeah.
we'll call it purgatory.
Yeah, that plus the flying sequence, that's probably where the majority of the budget went on this episode. Okay, actually, as well, probably the robot chest would have cost them a fair bit. Probably not that much because it's television. They were quite smart on this show about not overspending. But yeah, that would have cost some. The slime monster costume probably wouldn't have cost that much. Like the slime on his chest. I mean,
There is one
probably the
thing they
cheapest
could have
effect
done
they
with
could do.
Yeah, there is one thing they could have done with both the slime monster and the slime on his chest, and you pointed it out with the lair.
Oh, make it a little bit wetter.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's a few moments here and there. It looks quite wet and slimy. There's a few moments where it's stuck to his costume. It almost looks like his costume is getting damp, but that might just be, from studio lights. It might just have been sweat or something. Who knows?
Yeah,
But,
and the when Gerard first gets to when it first attacks him and his hand pulls away, you can see little bits of the slime on his fingers.
Yeah, so maybe it started wet and just as they kept going, it was just drying out. Maybe they just needed somebody on set with just a little spray bottle with water or something just to come between takes and just give it a quick spray. That would have been enough. But yeah, bottle episodes are usually made to save money, and as far as bottle episodes go, this is one of probably the most expensive ones, just because of the sheer amount of visual effects and prop work and the fact they had a guest star. Yeah, they had extras. They had the guest star with Lex Luger. I don't imagine he would have got paid that much because it's not a big part, but it's still something that would have cost money. I would be very interested to know how the budget of this episode compared to the rest of the season. I wonder whether this did actually save money or if it was just one of those things where it would have saved money if not for the ending, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Definitely.
Like, I'm surprised, honestly, that they even built that set. I guess they just needed to build the set because Superboy throws the monster through one of those big rocks at one point. Otherwise, they probably would have just done the whole thing on a green screen or something.
Mm.
But, Superboy always built sets when they could. Even going right back to the Alien Solution, they actually built a set for the alien spaceship. They quite easily could have just made that a CG set, just shot it on a green screen. But I don't know, maybe they knew they couldn't get away with it because that awful green screen shot from Countdown to Nowhere with the rocket behind it.
Yeah,
maybe that was enough to let them know maybe don't do that again, but who knows. Either way, 8.5 out of 10. I think that's a good score for this. Top 5 episode for both of us. I think it's my number 2, did I say? And you're together, it's number 4.
Yes.
So yeah, very respectable episode. Just a great one. I'd love to know what Alan Moore thinks of it. I imagine he doesn't like it because he doesn't like most of his work. But I don't know.
Actually, the only works that he has no problem with them, adapting is his actual superhero work because it's not his character. And as I recall, when J.M. DeMatteis did the script for Justice League Unlimited for the Man Who Has Everything, they actually sent a copy of it over to Alan Moore. He looked at it and says, "Yeah, this is fine."
Oh, that's good then. maybe he would have liked this one. I'm not sure whether he would have appreciated all the changes. And he probably wouldn't have appreciated this episode just because he likely didn't get paid anything for it because they changed so much they wouldn't have had to.
Yeah.
So yeah, it probably would be a situation where he would have reason not to like this episode. But at the end of the day, it's not the end of the world. I think it's a very good episode, and
And it's not a situation where they were ripping off Alan Moore. They were inspired by him. There's a difference.
yeah, no, it was a definite loving homage to that story. It wasn't just a straight up rip off. And Superboy did rip off a few things here and there.
Terminator.
They changed Terminator. I mean, I think we had 2 slightly Terminator-ish episodes, didn't we? So, yeah, it's just one of those things. And let's face it, it's one of those things that has continued. Smallville did it all the time. Like there was a Matrix episode of Smallville. There was a Hangover episode of Smallville. Like they kept doing all of these. Just all of these episodes. As soon as vampires started getting big again, they did a vampire-ish episode of Superboy. I don't remember exactly.
And it was okay when Smallville did it, but not when Superboy did it.
Oh, I don't think anyone has a problem with it on Superboy. It's just usually on Superboy's rip-off episodes, they're not the good episodes of the show. Like, it'd be okay if the episodes were slightly better.
Those people who point out, that it's so blatantly obvious when they're doing it on Superboy. These are the ones that are saying, "Oh, this is a great episode of Smallville."
Yeah, it's funny. Like you can tell sometimes that they're a little what's the word? Biases for different shows. I guess it depends what show you grew up watching. Whereas I grew up watching Superboy, Smallville, and Lois and Clark all around the same time, so I just have an equal. I wouldn't say equal actually, but very close levels of affection for each of those shows.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I always liked when Superboy did it. And I know Little Hercules isn't a great episode, but it is, it's the War Games episode. And I don't think it's that bad. It's got some great sets. I think the fact that Joaquin Phoenix is in it makes it notable. Even in some of the worst rip-off episodes of Superboy, there's still things to like in there. I'm amazed they didn't do an episode based on something like Weird Science. I guess Micro Boy has elements that are slightly. You can say they have some of the same flavor, even if the plot is very, very different.
Yeah,
but that's about as close as I can think. That one.
Micro Boy is very, very reminiscent of a lot of old Superboy stories, especially from the Bronze Age, like in New Adventures of Superboy, the story with Pulsar.
There was always someone like in comics, as long as there's been characters where someone wants to get superpowers, so they do what they can, but maybe the superpowers send them a bit mad, or it's things like that episode of Smallville, with Amy Adams, where it's basically their version of Parasite. She wants to get thinner, and there's kryptonite in her like diet shakes. But it turns her into a parasite. She literally needs to suck all the moisture out of people in order to stay alive.
Well, it's actually fat that she was sucking out of people.
Oh yeah, of course it was fat, but yeah, it's one of those be careful what you wish for tropes, isn't it?
If nuclear refuse gave them superpowers, it could do the same for me. Citizens, I'm off to the toxic waste dump.
Mayor West, you have lymphoma.
Oh, my.
Probably from rolling around in that toxic waste.
I see.
What in God's name were you trying to prove?
I was trying to gain superpowers.
Well, that's just silly.
Silly, yes. Idiotic, yes.
Yes.
Superboy did that all the time back in the comics. So you're right. Pointing out that comparison, Superboy comics to Micro Boy, it's perfect. Yeah, that's exactly what they were doing. It's just a shame maybe that they couldn't directly adapt more of those stories. I guess Kryptonite Kid is almost along the same way. He didn't want to get superpowers, but it was still sort of an experiment gone wrong. He gains powers, but they're sort of...
Well, the original Kryptonite Kid in the comics, he was an alien who was basically he's an alien delinquent who was on a work farm, and his planet said, "Okay, we need somebody to go up in space as a test for this rocket. Since you kids are criminals, we're going to take one of you. They send him up in the rocket, and he passes through some kind of radiation cloud that turns him and his dog into kryptonite.
I didn't know there was a kryptonite dog. I've never read the original Kryptonite Kid, but that's fun.
Yeah, it's called.
It's almost like it's funny because that almost rips off the Fantastic Four with going to space, and there's like a cloud of whatever it is in Fantastic Four, isn't it? You know, sometimes it's. I mean, they've changed the origin so many times, whether it's for movies or TV or whatever. But yeah, it's very similar, and it's the same thing they did with what's his name, Cyborg Superman and the rest of his crew. It was sort of they were the twisted versions of the Fantastic Four in a way, wasn't it?
Originally, yes.
So it's one of those things in comics. They pull from each other all the time, and I think this is one of the best. I think Mindscape is one of the better examples of it. Certainly the best example of it in this show, because as you say, Kryptonite Kid had very little to do with the original comic. It was just the name and power, really.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think we've talked enough about this episode. Is there anything else you wanted to say before we call it a day?
For those who still read comics, okay, and I know there are many of you out there who watch us, you might want to check out the most recent issue of the new Superman series, number 17. Okay, it has a 1-page flashback to Smallville with Clark as Superboy fighting a magic-based villain called Kid Warlock. It's a great sequence. Granted, it's only a page long, but those of you who read comics, make sure you check it out. They have now firmly established that Clark was Superboy in continuity again.
I mean, I'll probably just put the page on the screen, but we'll still tell people go out and read the comic. But yeah, as you can see, like they even like have a sign like welcome to Smallville type thing, and it's like the home of Superboy, and Superboy is in the font from the old comics, which I just thought was a really nice touch. But yeah, it's one of those things that's really, really nice to see, because the last time we had real confirmation like this that that Clark had a career as Superboy at some point was, I think, Secret Origin, which was a really long time ago now. But that even he was Superboy in secret.
The end
like
of
in this
Doomsday
one.
Clock. The end.
Oh, did they have something in?
Yeah.
I must have missed that. But yeah, it's just one of those things where he's not been Superboy in secret. Like he had an actual career. Smallville had it on the Welcome to Smallville sign that he lived there. Yeah, I miss when Superboy was a proper part of the continuity. So whenever they do little things like this, it's definitely worth noting.
Yes.
But,
and also check out the most recent issue of Justice Society of America, number 11. And this is for our Legion fans. The classic Bronze Age Legion is there, fighting Mordru, and Clark is there as Superboy.
Well, that's fun. Okay. Definitely go and check that out as well.
Yep.
Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you next week. And talking of the Legion, I think next week we'll watch an episode of the Legion of Superheroes. We might as well go straight on to episode 2 now. So
yes,
we'll see you then. Goodbye.
Viacom.